Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the RMU Island Sports Center. I am Brian Mitchell. You can find me on Twitter at PHD Mitch. This is Matt Gajtka. Of course, you've seen him on the Peters Township broadcast on the Pittsburgh Hockey Digest Facebook Live page. We're talking the PIHL postseason here today. Matt, how's your day going, man?
Well, it's terrific. But good to be inside as opposed to outside with, it looks like we're going to have to batten down the hatches here on the Ohio River.
We're looking at the Ohio. It's got a little bit of white cast going on now.
It's wild. I'm used to seeing it frozen the last couple of weeks, and, well, different type of weather, but I guess we're getting closer to spring. That means playoff time, so we're fired up about it. Yeah.
The nice weather's going to start rolling, and that's how I judge it.
Yep.
We're getting there soon. So we're going to talk AAA hockey here. Before we get to the first round, we've got a play-in game going on. It's going to be Butler, and it's going to be that's a good question. Cannon, McMillan, Big Macs. Sometimes I slip up like that, guys. You know me.
Well, you have a lot of teams to keep track of. I just need to know AAA. You need to know all four playoff brackets.
Of course, you cover the Peters Township Indians. This is the game that's going to decide who they play in the first round in a couple weeks. What do you think so far between Butler and Cannon Mac?
Well, Cannon Mac has some offensive potential. Johnny McDonald's always a guy you have to watch out for. He was right near the top of the scoring race in Class AAA all season long. And then, well, you look at your 8th seed there with Butler dropping down at the end of the season. Butler really had a struggle from about the middle point of January on, really since they got back from holiday break. So the Golden Tornado, I feel like even though they're the 8th seed, it feels like they're the underdog in this matchup. Cannon Mac has been they've been at the bottom of the standings all season long, but I feel like Butler's on more of a downward trend. So if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Cannon Mac, and it's going to be close, though. It's going to be an essential toss-up.
I've got an argument there for that, and I do agree on the toss-up, but I'll get there in a second. Butler, the thing is that I've seen with them, and I saw them 3 or 4 games down the stretch, they were tight in those games, although the scores may not have shown it. They were tough and willing to play there, so that's one of those things you have to look at. And Cannon Mac's is in the same boat there. They were tough whenever I went and saw them against Bethel Park. They played the Blackhawks very tight. So yes, that is a toss-up game, and I mean, when it comes down to to Peters Township playing one of those two, it's going to be an interesting matchup either way, especially with Cannon Mac. I think they split the season series down at Princegate this year. So you look at that, and then you have the Butler, who of course Peters Township was able to take care of early in the season. So it's one of those matchups you're going to look at. So we're going to go into the second seed now. The second part of that seed.
Well, I will say, if you don't mind, I will say about Butler, to your point about playing teams close, they played Peters Township to a 0-0 tie for almost the end of 2 periods just a few weeks ago up at Frozen Pond. Then PT poured it on with 6 in the final 20 minutes or so. But, that's an interesting dynamic. And it's all about form at this time of year. So I suppose it's in the eye of the beholder when it comes to these two teams.
It's going to be interesting to see. Now we're looking at who's going to face them in the following round in this one. It's going to be Mount Lebanon and Cathedral Prep. Now this is the matchup to look at right now. Tale of 2 teams. Mount Lebanon has been playing tight hockey. However, it's been a little bit rough in the stretch for them. Here at Cathedral Prep, I don't know if you can put them out with a fire hose right now.
All right, the Ramblers started 0-7, and here they are now looking like, I don't know if they're a favorite to win the entire thing or the favorite. They might be one of the top 3 or 4 teams, and we'll get to that in a moment, who we think can really take home the Class AAA title. But I was so impressed seeing Cathedral Prep come down and beat Peters Township. They knocked out the Indians' 12-game unbeaten streak just a couple of weeks prior to this. And they have some players back who are playing football during the fall. That's always a factor. A really athletic team, a really fast team. I think they've got a lot going for them. And Mount Lebo, of course, has Wyatt George.
You cannot deny the fact that
the top gunner in Class AAA. But they leaked a lot of goals late. They gave up 10 to Bethel Park, which is as hot as any team coming into the playoffs, factoring out the last week of the season. And they gave up 8 to Peters Township, and both of those matchups were very recent here. So, again, the form discussion, it's got to go to Cathedral Prep if you're just going by how they've done since the start of January.
Yeah, Cathedral Prep has just absolutely been on fire. One of my favorites right now. You can't deny a team that has that much momentum going into the postseason. We'll move along now. North Allegheny, Seneca Valley. Of course, we talked that final week. Could have been any of those 3 teams, depending on the result of that Bethel Park Peters game. We ended up with North Allegheny taking the 2 seed. They're going to, let's just say host Seneca Valley. It's the Battle of Barrel there. We discussed this at length, I believe, on Friday night, or was it Saturday night, last night. And this was one of the matchups that you look at and you're like, I saw these 2 play a couple weeks ago. It was nothing. Was it either 1-1 or 0-0 towards the end of the game, 19 seconds left? it was a Lamarck goal that decided that. So, I mean, you think about that, and you look at Seneca Valley, you think Aiden Campbell, and you got that experience of returning as the AAA champions. So, but North Allegheny has been a powerhouse all year, and they just happened to be in a strange position at the end of the year. What do you have to say about that matchup?
Well, Campbell, for me, is the key player here. If he can give Seneca Valley a little bit better goaltending, and they had it with Logan Johnson the last 2 years, too, and, of course, it bore fruit in the Penguins Cup playoffs last season as they took out the defending champs PT. So, yeah, Seneca Valley, it's hard to ignore the players that they returned there. They returned quite a few from last year's team. So there's that. But I feel like North Allegheny is probably the better team from top to bottom. And don't ignore Richard Carapandi in net.
I was about to bring him up.
He's no slouch as well.
Advocate.
So we could be looking at a really low-scoring game here. As you mentioned, they've had some of those matchups in the recent past. Really tough to pick this one, though, especially because they're both on each other's home ice. Obviously, they've done this quite a few times. They've done this dance. So it might be the toughest of the first-round matchups to pick in Class AAA. That's what I'll say on that one.
It's going to be one great game up there at Barrow. I can't wait to see how that one turns out. The final matchup is Bethel Park and Central Catholic. It's hard to say. You're looking at a 3-6 matchup that could have been the 1-8 matchup at any given time, but it's definitely a one to watch. One of those other toss-ups here. I mean, you're looking at Bethel Park with, of course, the J.C. Bell was chasing the title all season. And they came on late, too. They started out slow and were able to just ramble in and almost took the first seed with a win. But unfortunately, with the Peters Township third period, that didn't happen.
Yeah, that's what Peters has done to so many teams this year. But to your point on Bethel Park, 8-game win streak at the end of the season. They ran out of steam against Peters Township just right at the finish line. They were this close to sneaking away and taking that banner, taking the regular season championship. It came down to just a bounce here or there and a shot here or there. So I like Bethel Park a lot. I still think they're going to be able to maintain that form. Central Catholic, middle of the standings all year. They never really got too hot or too cold. So it's not like it's going to be a pushover matchup. I don't think any of these are. AAA is pretty deep, I think, this year, as we'll discuss when we get down to talking about our championship contenders. But I like Bethel Park in this one. I feel like it's a little bit of an easier pick. Not that it's that easy, but I think it's I feel better about picking Bethel Park, the higher seed in this matchup.
I like Bethel Park at the beginning of the year, and then Erie Cathedral Prep came on late. It's just one of these. We'll talk about that in a couple seconds here, but it was one of the tougher ones, and I think we discussed this was one of those. Any of these matchups, like I could say that any of the bottom 4 teams could come out of this, even all of them, and I would say I'm not surprised at this point because that's how AAA has been. That's how deep AAA has been all season, and you're talking contenders now, Matt. We discussed this also, but who do you have for me right now? Who do you think?
Who I think is going to go all the way? Well, I think we're going to see 1 versus 2. And I know we just talked about depth and all that, but I think it's going to be North Allegheny against Peters Township. And at that point, it's anybody's guess what would happen. But at the same time, there are some potential roadblocks here. For Peters Township, they await the winner of the 8-9 matchup. If it's Ken and Mac, that's a South Hills rivalry, and that'll be the 4th time they've met this season with the unbalanced schedule. PT played both Bethel Park and Ken and Mac 3 times this year. So there are no secrets. There are no surprises between those 2 teams. So that would be interesting if Ken and Mac does get through. I think, last year, PT had to just squeak by Plum in the first round, 2-1 down at Princescape in South Point. So there are no easy games. You're right into the quarterfinals here, and it's a challenge. It's winner take all. So, of course, there's always that anything can happen factor. I'd like Cathedral Prep to advance to the semifinals, and that could be a toss-up as well against Peters Township right at the top of that bracket. I hate to keep saying toss-up, but it is, and Cathedral Prep did go in to South Point and take out Peters Township, as I referenced. And the number 1 seed PT, Brian, they won it by a point. They had that really big push. They started 2-2, did the Indians, and then they went on that 12-game unbeaten run, and then recovered to top Bethel Park and end up taking that regular season title for the 2nd straight year. But the 3 losses for Peters Township are to North Allegheny, Seneca Valley, and Cathedral Prep. So it's not like they dominated everybody. They had their struggles. They split the season series with all 3. I think those 3 are the teams that I feel like could still challenge for this championship.
I had Bethel Park, Cathedral Prep, and Peters Township. I love North Allegheny, but I really am interested to see if they can get through Seneca Valley. I mean, it rattles my brain how close these games could be. You're talking possible 1-goal games, and that's a toss-up. I would really like to say North Allegheny's in that mix, but Cathedral Prep being on a tear right now, it's going to be the winner of Peters Township or Cathedral Prep in the second round. I can't see Mount Lebanon getting past Cathedral Prep on this run right now. I mean, I hope that they do. I really do. I mean, excuse me. I don't hope that they do.
Unbiased observer, Brian Mitchell.
I hope that we have the ability to have a great game down there at Levo, and it's going to be. But I really have a hard time looking at seeing that much momentum and a team that's going opposite ways. Now, if Mount Lebanon just goes and defeats Cathedral Prep, that's an immediate momentum turner going into the semifinal against Peters Township or whoever they face in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see that it's going. I like Peters Township, Cathedral Prep, or Bethel Park right now. If I had to put it, say what it's going to be, it's going to be Peters Township, Bethel Park in 66.
Well, Bethel Park had the second best offense in Class AAA this year. PT had the first, and then both teams were top 3 in defense. So 2 very well-rounded teams, 2 teams that played well at the end of the year. So yeah, I could easily see Bethel Park getting through to the championship game. I think it's too much depth up front for Peters Township, though. They just keep hitting you, and the number that or the fact that I keep coming back to with Peters Township, and I've seen it up close. I've called 16 of their 18 games this year. Teams just cannot hang with them late in games. Maybe North Allegheny did the best. The game we did together up at Barrel maybe 4 weeks ago, and late goal by Tori Schwartz decides it. Maybe kind of a weird bounce or a strange decision.
A strange decision to jump out and get that puck, but at the same time, that was a heck of a play by Schwartz to be able to throw that into the net. I mean, but
it was tight. It was an airtight game.
And I think to the point you're making, how many seniors did Peters Township graduate last year?
Oh God, it's over 12.
And how many did they graduate this year?
Well, they have 17 now. So yeah.
They still have players that were on that state championship team from 2 years ago, the Wilberts.
The Wilberts, yeah. Alex Wilbert seems like he's taken the reins here. I believe he started 7 in the last 10. Brock Sharbaugh, the senior, was playing very well earlier in the year, but it looks like Rick Tingle, the Indians coach, is going to go with the guy who got him all the way to the promised land. They won it right here behind us against Holy Ghost Prep 2 years ago with a freshman Wilbert in net, and his 2 brothers have been contributing factors. Mark Lehman's really stepped up, a junior, as a number 2, 200-foot center. I'm really impressed by his play. And you have the top line for PT, which is always going to hurt you no matter what, with Schwartz and Luppy and Anthos. So they outscored opponents 2-1 basically in the second and the third periods this season. And it's hard for me to ignore that. You look at goal differential, and the answer is PT if you want to break it down analytically on that side of it. And they had the 1 loss to Cathedral Prep. Maybe they took the Ramblers a little bit lightly, or they saw the record, or they thought, well, we beat them pretty soundly earlier in the year up at Erie, and it was a totally different story. So it's going to be splitting hairs, but I know you can accuse me of bias. That's okay, because I do work for Peters Township, but I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on Class AAA.
Because he actually has seen.
I've seen everybody
out here so far. So it's nice to have that type of experience, especially at the senior level at that point, the varsity level at AAA. So, Mike, I appreciate it. Do you have any other thing you'd like to add to this tonight?
No, just thanks for having me, and I look forward to the broadcasts and hoping we can provide some greater, I guess, platforms for high school hockey in here.
We'll be back, by the way. You and I will be on the call during that first Peters Township game. I'll be joining him at Princecave whenever Peters Township faces off the winner of the Butler and
Ken and Mac.
I keep forgetting. I
it's in their building down there.
It is in their building. It's just it slips my mind. Like you said, so many teams, and
by the way, that Butler Ken and Mac match up at the Barrel Ice Complex. We should mention it's a neutral site game.
That will be on Monday at
9 o'clock tomorrow.
So, tomorrow, following the West Day game.
Mm-hmm. So it's a little weird here with AAA. 7 out of the 9 teams are waiting for a week, and for Peters Township, maybe that's the one thing that could dampen your enthusiasm for them, is that'll make 2 out of 3 weeks off for the Indians.
That's the nice thing about the way they set it up this year. Last year, they were playing so many games in a short period of time because of the district playoffs, and they set up the play-in games and the single-A first round the week prior, so they added an additional week to the postseason this year to allow teams to only have to play 1 game in a week. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case in single-A, and possibly D2, but at this point, we're getting to the point where they're setting it up nicely for them. So.
Well, and last year there was no play-in game in AAA as well, so it was just a straight 8-team bracket. A little different this year with the 9 teams. They decided to include everybody, and I don't have an issue with that. So, anyway, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Matt.
Look forward to we'll see you in about what 9 days' time.
9 days. All right. Take care, Matt. All right. We will be welcoming Ed Major here for the Talk AA, Single A, and Division 2 hockey. Once again, I'd like to thank you for joining us on Facebook Live at Pittsburgh Hockey Digest. And thank Matt Gajtka for joining me here today, and Ed Major for nearly taking my ear off, stepping on my wire.
Not a good start.
This is Ed Major. He's one of our photographers and our PIHL coverage guys. He's been with me for 2 years now, and I appreciate everything. He's also with the ACHA that we do here. So, Ed, how's everything going today, sir?
I can't complain. A little windy out there. Almost flew away on the way in, but
Yeah,
made it in perfectly.
I was on 79. I thought my car was going to slide off the road a couple times. It's definitely pretty getting pretty bad out there. We're going to talk AA here. Of course, Ed bases himself out of the South Hills, so he sees a lot of the teams out of Ice Castle, Lebo. He's been to Princegate, Barrel for us, and a couple other locations, so we appreciate all that. Ed, we're going to start it out where we're normally going to start it out. We're going to talk those playing games. First one we're going to talk is Hempfield and Quaker Valley. What do you think about that matchup right now, sir?
Honestly, I'm going to give it to I'm inclined to give it to Hempfield right off the bat. Just I saw them several times down in Ice Castle against Upper St. Clair and against Baldwin. Against Upper St. Clair especially, they held their own so much more than I expected. Especially Upper St. Clair you have the two top scorers in the AA between Carone and is it
Giacobi.
The
Yeah.
two top scorers in the AA, and Hempfield just more than held their own. Unfortunately, fell in that game, but actually they fell in that game to what I honestly thought was it was a blown icing call that kind of gave Upper St. Clair all that momentum.
Mm-hmm.
It should have been an icing call. The refs just waved it all off. Upper St. Clair went down, scored, and then from there just took the control. But it could have been a very different game had that one call not been made, or had that one call been made.
Mm-hmm.
But Hempfield, they continued battling. They tried to keep it close. So I would give them the edge over Quaker Valley. I don't see Quaker Valley having as much depth to get past Hempfield in this matchup.
Mm-hmm. Here's the kicker with Quaker Valley, though. Last year went into Latrobe in the first round, took down the Wildcats in the overtime, 1-0. I was on hand for that game. It was one of the craziest games I had ever seen. I believe actually it was double overtime for that contest. So don't count them out, but they did graduate a lot of firepower last year into this year, and it's going to be interesting. I still like Hempfield. They're a very, very, very high-potent, high-octane offense, and I don't think that Quaker Valley has the depth to match what Hempfield's going to be able to bring with Gerger and Trzynski and all that. Of course, I started calling him Matty Hattie throughout the season because every game I went to, the guy would score a hat trick. So we each have a little bit of bias in the play-in rounds because I'll be honest with you, I went to Hempfield, he went to Baldwin. So don't think anything otherwise. I will just full disclosure at that, but we're going to have to agree on Hempfield on that one. So
and the one thing I did notice about Hempfield as well, especially against the Baldwin game, they tended to play their top six. Mm-hmm. Obviously your top six are going to play more than your bottom six forwards, and in the first place anyway. But I noticed their top six played much more than other teams would play their top six. So they put a lot of ice time into their top six, and you'd think they would get gassed at some point, but they have that stamina, and they just have that stamina to push forth and go for almost a whole game. So even if you don't need the depth, Hempfield has that depth that can push them over.
All right, so we're going to go to the second game now. The following game, both these games are at Alpha Ice Complex, 7 and 9. Second game, defending Division II champion Moon Tigers. I can say that because the majority of their team has returned, minus the players that made them a co-op team last year. Of course, those players went on to play for Bishop Cannon this year. But you're looking at a matchup between Moon and Baldwin. You've seen a lot of Baldwin. I think we've seen Moon enough to know what they bring to the table, especially after last year's run. Where's your head at on that?
Honestly, this is probably the one game in maybe all of the classifications that I just can't wrap my head around either one. I would have said Moon after I saw the Baldwin Moon game on January 28th, where Moon they went out to a quick 3-0 lead. Baldwin came back with a goal, but Moon put in the empty netter for the 4-1 win. I would have said Moon definitely after that, but after seeing what Baldwin has done to end the season, yeah, they fell to Franklin Regional in the last game, But between that Moon game and their final against Franklin Regional, they took down their rival Upper St. Clair with 6 goals in that.
You have to remember that Moon Upper St. I mean that Baldwin Upper St. Clair game. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
However, you talk about those two, Moon, Baldwin, and I think Moon just takes the experience here of winning a championship. And I like Baldwin on the run, but I'm going to have to speak for – well, I'm not going to speak for the guys in Upper St. Clair, but I'm going to have to go with Moon here. I like the experience. I like the fact that they have Konase in net. I really like the fact that they can lend from that and take it into the postseason. Especially they were on a run at the end. They gave Hampton a run for their money at the end there for that 3 seed.
There's no substitute for experience in the postseason. There's no substitute for having that experience in that moment and knowing exactly what you can do and what to do and just being comfortable in that moment. Yeah. Baldwin might get a little bit of the starstruck moment there, especially with the run, especially after beating Upper St. Clair and shelling Quaker Valley at the end of the season. Their head might have gotten a little too big to hold it in this first round.
But it's momentum that you think about. And we look at so we'll move into the next round. The Hempfield-Quaker Valley matchup means that winner has to go up to Barrel Ice Complex and play the Pine Richland Rams. Last I checked, the number 2 team in all of the state, regardless of classification. Do you have any thoughts on how what could happen there? I mean, right now in my mind, I'm going through scenarios, but Pine Richland is just so deep this year, and they're so high octane. I mean, a Hempfield Pine Richland matchup would be fun, and a Quaker Valley Pine Richland matchup at Barrel would be the home game for both teams. But at the same time, I can't put a scenario in my head. There is only, this later too, by the way.
There's only one team, I believe, that was able to beat Pine Richland this year, if I'm correct, and that was Hampton in a shootout, not just overtime, in a shootout. Mm-hmm. And so you can't really, by all stretches, I kind of see Pine Richland as undefeated. If they went to a shootout against Hampton, I don't see Quaker Valley putting as much, or Hempfield. I don't see either one of those teams putting as much pressure on the Rams as Hampton had done that, and that was why Hampton won that game. So
definitely one of those things you look at, and we'll move. I like Pine Richland. I mean, there's nothing to not like about Pine Richland in either matchup, and it's sad. It's not sad to say, but at the same time, it's like, who's going to stop the Rams at this point? It's going to be a tough matchup for either team to try to match up for. So we'll move on because I think we're on the same page with that one there. Greater Latrobe, Hampton. I mean, this is going to be a great matchup right here. Hampton was on fire towards the end of the season. Latrobe dropped a couple games in a row, was able to come back, and they fought their way back. But with Upper St. Clair winning in the final week, they weren't able to claim the number 1 seed that they had the entire time. Now they're going to welcome Hampton to Kirk Nevin Arena. I like Latrobe here. It's hard to say I love Hampton, and I love, with everything that they fought through after last year, the disqualification, and this is going to be a great matchup. It's going to be motivation for the kids to be able to get out there and try to take down a team like Latrobe, who I believe was number 8 last I checked in the state. And I'm interested to see this matchup personally because I'm not going to be there for that. It's going to be, I believe Jared Todhunter is going to catch that matchup in full, and then he's going to hit up the Burl for their matchup afterwards. But I'm interested to see how this matchup turns out because either team can possibly win this one. And that game in the semifinal against Pine Richland will be, or whoever Pine Richland faces, will be a great matchup. So, what do you think about those two?
I'm kind of on the same boat. I'm more inclined to go with Greater Latrobe there. Just they were as close as you can get to that top seed without actually getting it. And I don't see Hampton. I see Hampton putting a real good push on them like Hampton had done against Pine Richland. And if Hampton's going to win, it's going to be an overtime or shootout.
We got Gage Handwork versus Jake.
There are no shootouts in the postseason.
No, it's all going to be.
So if Hampton wins, I think it would have to be an overtime win. But Greater Latrobe actually, to me, I've seen them have a little bit of a kind of, I don't want to say up and down season, but they've had some losses that have maybe kind of scratched my head a little bit. They dominated Baldwin in the opener of the season, and then they lost to Baldwin later on in the season. Just a couple other losses, just kind of.
The one that I was actually noting, and I was up at Barrel when this occurred, when we were talking about it with a couple of the other coaches, was the Penn Trafford loss at the end of the season, and that one hurt. It seemed like it might have hurt them a little bit, but they jumped back the next game, were able to pull that victory off in the end. It's going to be an interesting matchup. I like Latrobe, but I agree with you. That's gonna be as close as they come there. McGee versus Handwork, as long as they start McGee in that game. Of course, both McGee was an all-star, I believe Handwork was too. And it's going to be an interesting matchup there. All right. You had Baldwin. I had Moon. Upper St. Clair, Baldwin. What do you think there? Where's your head at? Wrap your head around the third trial, that one.
To me, for that matchup, all you need to do is take a look at the 2 times they met in the regular season. Mm-hmm. Baldwin took the shootout win in November earlier in the season, and then they dominated Upper St. Clair just a few weeks ago both at Ice Castle on senior night. Andrew Golvash put in 4 goals in that game. If Baldwin can get through Moon, then I think they can really hold Upper St. Clair's feet to the fire, and they really have a real great shot at winning that, just based on the experience that those players have in that rivalry game. And I'm kind of thinking ahead here. If Baldwin can get through Moon, they have a real good shot against Upper St. Clair. Who's to say they can't beat a Pine Richland? Who's to say they can't beat a Hampton? Some people might disagree with me on some of those, but
we already mentioned about bias, guys. Let's make sure that we're on the same page here. He's covered a lot of them this year. He's seen them a lot more, but he's also seen those 2 matchups between the 2 teams. So seeing that now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. 3 times a charm. I have to go with Upper St. Clair here. The depth, the ability to, their explosive offense, and the fact that they've dropped 2 to Baldwin. On their, they both share the rank.
They're going to have a chip on their shoulder.
But they're going to have a chip on their shoulder. I think it's Upper St. Clair, honestly, and I'm sorry, Baldwin. It's not going to be close. I think Upper St. Clair takes that one, and they take that one.
And especially with Upper St. Clair, they've got the 2 top scorers in AA.
Well, you look at Jacoby and Carone. So. I mean, what Carone's only a freshman, right?
Yeah.
So I just saw him in a U15 game. You're
gonna see him this year. You're gonna see him next year. You're gonna see him the year after.
He's not going anywhere anytime soon.
He's gonna be terrorizing Baldwin for a few years now.
So we look at that one. Then we go into that final matchup, and this is one that I find interesting. Mars Franklin Regional. Franklin Regional came on at the end. Mars kind of was sat at the top, right under Pine Richland the entire time, and actually until the final 2 weeks, had the opportunity to take the number 1 seed. Unfortunately, of course, with the Pine Richland win over Latrobe, weren't able to do that. But Mars Franklin Regional, which I've dubbed the battle of the Dannies, Danny Soltez versus Danny Mitchell, and Soltez, I come back to it. It maybe not has been one of his best years that he's had, but you can't doubt a guy who has 2 Penguin Cups and state title. With Franklin Regional. So. Those were in single A, went up to double A, maybe didn't have the same result. But, you got Danny Mitchell, who's just lights out whenever you need to. And if he can't go because of a tournament, it's going to be Lindsay Scott, who played her butt off against Pine Richland whenever I was up there the first time. So they're both high scoring. Mars and Franklin both play a physical game. You cannot rule out Seneca. You cannot rule out Virog for Franklin Regional. Then you look at Mars. You look at a couple of their big guns right there. Of course, you can. Number 11. It slips my mind. And every time I tell you, I see so many players. I
haven't seen much.
I apologize once again, but he is lights out there. And Jackson Croft, you have to be able to neutralize him. That's the thing. I don't think Franklin Regional has enough to neutralize somebody like Jackson Croft and the complement of players that they have on that team. So
I haven't seen much of Franklin Regional or Mars this season. I just haven't gotten the opportunity to see those 2 as much. But like we're saying in the Moon Baldwin matchup, there's no substitute for that experience that you can have bringing past Penguins Cup and past playoff experiences back. And it'll definitely be a big factor for them.
I like Mars. What do you like?
Yeah, I think I'd be inclined to give the nod to Mars at that point. Franklin Regional, I talked about Greater Latrobe kind of having a couple little losses, got a little bit up and down. I didn't want to use that phrase for them, but I think I would kind of use that phrase for Franklin Regional. Their season has been a little up and down with the wins and the losses. So
they've been up there with the goals for, but they've also been there with the goals against. And Mars hasn't exactly had too many goals against this year. I mean, like I said, B-Rod can run the show there, so it's one of those things you have to pay attention to. So we'll move on to Single A now. And this is where it gets fun. You think you started to have fun before. Now we have a bunch of teams that haven't played each other yet, that we have to go off the basis of seeing them. And this is where we're going to have a good time and lose you.
When I said past experience really helps, this is exactly the opposite. You've got teams facing other teams that you go onto the ice and you go, where the heck did they come from? I've never seen them before.
Like I saw.
Are they in Single A?
I was at South Fayette TJ last week, and I saw at least 3 coaches scouting that game, and I was like, well, yeah, if you've never seen these teams before, you're probably going to go check out that, see how they're playing.
If you're in the north, you're going to want to come down.
So we're going to start with the play-in game, and that, of course, is Blackhawk and Beaver. The Battle of Brady's Run is going to be played at Brady's Run on Monday. I don't have a time for that, but that game will be for the 8th seed in the north, and that team will go on to face those South Fayette Lions. But we'll get back to that in a second. I'll just let those two be merged right now for the sake of timing and arguments. So the first game we're going to look at, of course, we're at the RMU Island Sports Center. We're home of 3 of these teams. First and foremost, the Montour Spartans, who came out of nowhere this season and shocked me. We had a couple conversations with Coach Shell, and back and forth before the season started, and then out of nowhere, Montour went on an absolute tear this season. And
was Montour in the St. Margaret's tournament?
Yes, they were. And it was actually one of those things where we were talking 3 games. They played 4 games in the preseason. I believe they gave up almost 50-some goals, and they didn't. It was a rough go for them. And I don't know what it was, but then they came out this season and just ran the North. So you're talking Montour, you're talking Greensburg-Salem. This is a no contest. It sucks. I hate to say it, Greensburg-Salem, and once again, I'm going to apologize to about a lot of teams on this one, but I'm a realist here, and you look at that. You look at the South and East. Bishop McCourt ineligible. Wheeling Catholic finished above them, ineligible because they're from West Virginia. They can't play for the state title. I have to give this one to Montour, and as I said with Upper St. Clair, Greensburg-Salem, you have a chance here. I mean, there is something to say about they could come out and fall on their faces. It could be a bad game by O'Malley. I mean, you never know. You don't know what's going to happen out there.
The postseason is essentially a brand new season.
It's a new season, but the track record for Montour, Felsing having a ridiculous year, and that the scoring and everything for this team is just going to be too much, and I have to go with Montour.
I saw Montour one time up at Barrel against West A, and actually West A's goaltender Josh Ferry was our reigning goaltender of the month that month. And had I seen that game before we picked a goaltender of the month, he would not have been in the conversation. Montour just knew how to scored it well. They just knew exactly what they were doing, and that's the only time I have seen Montour all season. And after that game, I was convinced. So that should tell you something.
All right, so we're going to the second game that will play whoever wins the first game at Mount Lebanon on March 4th. This game will be at the Ice Castle on Monday. South Park, Swickley Academy.
I will be there for that matchup.
It's going to be South Park, Swickley Academy. I like South Park here, but not to the point where it's going to be a given.
Yeah,
Swickley came on at the end. Of course, they were in that battle for the 6 and the 5-6 seed with Fox Chapel. But that North is not as deep as the South and East, and I'm going to have that in my review a little bit. It's released a little bit later. I don't see South Park having an easy time with this.
It's not a given, definitely, but I think South Park has a propensity to start off fast. I think their goal differential is like plus 10 or somewhere in that area just in the first period alone. If you kind of look at the splits on the PIHL site, and based on the games that I've seen them so far this year, that backs that up. And I think if they can start fast, if they can get some quick goals in the first period, then they can kind of try to run. They can dictate the rest of the game, and they can run it the way they want to run it. It's not going to be given, but if they can start off fast, it'll help their chances a lot.
Another game changer for Swickley is, of course, Matthew Dukovic. And I've seen him go off a couple times in matchups. So that's the reason why I have a hard time accepting that as, that this is anything other than a toss-up at this point. I'm going to lean towards South Park, but that's not going to be it's not going to be a close. That's not going to be a definite at all.
Yeah, it was when I went through the first round in the bracket, I was looking at it. I skipped over that, and I skipped over the other 4 or 5 matchup, went through the other, and went back to those 2, and I was just having a heck of a time trying to figure out who I'd go with for those.
All right, we're going to move along, and we're going to look at Thomas Jefferson and Freeport. The number 2-7 seed, 2 and 7 in this bracket. The winner will face Meadville Norwin, winner at RU the 4th at 9:15. Thomas Jefferson, Freeport, of course. Thomas Jefferson, tough team all season. I mean, you're on a very small bench there from TJ, but they played big the entire time. And you look at that, and Freeport, of course, they play tough. They're a good hockey team, but I don't think that they're close to the Jaguars in any sense.
Yeah,
they're a year away, maybe a year or 2 away, but they're not at the Jaguars.
I see Thomas Jefferson playing their own physical game. I remember a game very early on in the season, back in October, where they were playing. I believe they came to Ice Castle and played South Park, and I was just in awe at kind of how physical that game was and how much Thomas Jefferson controlled the flow of that physicality. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what helped them get with that win early on. And I think you're going to see the same thing here against Freeport.
Yeah, I don't have a really good reason to say anybody other than TJ in this game. Freeport, like I said, anybody has a chance on any given day, but it's going to be an uphill battle for the Yellow Jackets there. Meadville Norwin. Norwin had a really strong start to the season. Meadville's just been Meadville. They played Bulldog hockey. They played Bulldog hockey well. Should have probably been the single A champions last year. Bishop McCourt was just too powerful. This is one of those matchups that you just scratch your head and you're like, you want to say Meadville, all in all, but you got to give a little bit of a nod to the physicality and the the grittiness that Norwin brings to the table there. Yeah,
I saw a little bit of that Norwin at Mount Nebo, either December or January. One of those 2. The whole season's kind of blended together.
I was looking at my numbers. I'm almost on 60, 70 games here.
This was also my first full season covering PIHL. Remember last season I kind of came in right after the All-Star. So this was my first full season, so I'm really getting the sense of the marathon. But I mean, Meadville, who had Nick Franz with Meadville.
Yeah.
I remember when we were first trying to do our Player of the Month and Goaltender of the Month, our argument for Franz in October was if we don't pick Franz, because he tore it up in October, like he's been doing all season, basically. But if we kind of don't give it to him, he's going to keep coming up in the discussion all season long, every month. And do we want to have to keep kind of deciding between him and someone else every month, because he has been on a tear all season?
And the other thing about Meadville is they have that TJ effect. Like I just mentioned, short bench, but play well as a short bench.
Yeah.
They're very well conditioned. They know how to play deep into a game with a short bench. And you can't teach that. You have to work on that. And that's something you actually have to train and learn. And that's a good thing. That's the thing about Meadville. It keeps them coming back every year, is that they just know how to win with a very small bench and play big minutes, big time. So it's going to be an interesting matchup there. I love Eddie Kaufman as a goaltender. So it's going to be one of the – I think Meadville takes that one.
Yeah.
It's going to be a gritty game. It's going to be a fun game. Hoping to find somebody to cover that game because it's hard for us to get up to Meadville. So we're trying to find somebody out there. All right. We're going to move into the other bracket now. It's going to be – switched it out. For other bracket, side of the bracket, it's going to be South Fayette versus the winner of Blackhawk Beaver. Thank you for coming. I love both the teams that Brady's run. Both the teams that Brady's run play tough hockey. South Fayette.
Live.
Sorry. We're getting low, guys.
It's all right. We might have to jump out and do the other two in a couple minutes, but it's okay. South Fayette and Blackhawk Beaver. If we lose you for a second, we might have to reset the battery on this camera. We had an issue with our starting camera, so we can go to a backup today. South Fayette, Blackhawk Beaver. South Fayette, just a powerhouse right now. You cannot go against Bruce Hardman.
Yeah,
you cannot go against that offense.
I was just about to say that I think the key there is Hardman. Like, the key there is going to be for the whole playoffs, basically. The question the teams are going to have to ask is, can we get past Bruce Hardman? I think the answer is going to be no for most of the first few rounds. Maybe in the later rounds, some teams can try and solve them a little bit. But
you can't deny that, and you can't deny Ian Kumar out front. That's just the dynamic player, right? He's just a dynamic player. It's just hard to stop him. I don't have any qualms about calling South Fayette on that one. We're looking at that first round there. Okay, the winner of that game will face the winner of North Hills, Westmont Hilltop on March 5th. Unfortunately, for both of these teams, I'm going to have to err to you, and we're going to have to go to stat because this is a matchup. Unfortunately, was of my unable to go and see teams, all the teams this year type thing. And both of them happen to be on that list. So I'm sorry to North Hills, sorry to Westmont Hilltop, but I will tell you this much. This game, the winner of this team will face the South Fayette Blackhawk Beaver winner. I will be there for that game because that'll be the game after I'm on air with Matt Gajtka. So I'll be covering that game, North Hills, Westmont Hilltop.
Yeah, those two, they're not going to like me much either. I haven't seen North Hills at all this season. I did get to see Westmont Hilltop a little bit against, I believe it was Shar Valley out of the Mount Lebanon Ice Center. And they hung around with Shar Valley very, 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 very well. They played a little bit of a kind of a mix, I thought, between a physical game and a fast game, which I haven't seen that much in a lot of teams. Usually teams kind of pick kind of one propensity or the other. Mm-hmm. They kind of did a little bit of both very well. Shar Valley did end up pulling out with the winner in that one, but I was convinced that Westmont Hilltop could. I think, honestly, I think they deserved a little more than the 5 seed. They could have ended up having a run at that 4 seed, but I think they'll give North Hills a really good run for their money.
All right. I'm going to call that one probably North Hills. I like Ethan Isley in net, and he's a very young goaltender, and North Hills has been able to hang in there with the top 3 teams in the North. That's the nice thing.
Never count out goaltending.
Westmont Hilltop has done the same thing with the South and the East, but the home ice advantage here at the Island and everything else that goes with it, and the goaltending is going to be a great matchup. I believe that game is on Thursday, 7:15. We'll tell you that we did get somebody to help us out in the next couple of years. He's located out of this area, so I'd like to just announce and thank Gary Heeman for joining our high school coverage starting next season, but also starting with this Thursday's game. He will be covering the North Hills Westmont Hilltop game here at the Island for us. Thank you, Gary. Welcome him. Of course, you know Gary from our Robert Morris men's coverage, so he was excited to be able to come on and join us and help us out with our coverage. And I know we slacked here at the Island this year, and it was one of those weak points that I wanted to fix for next year. And thank you, Gary, for helping us fix that. He'll be able to help us out there and a couple other local rinks here. So we're going to move on to West A, Shar Valley. I can't go against a Brian Bain coach team. Is it hard for me to do? This is like two of the coaches that are really close to us that would like to help us whenever they can and do everything. We have a bunch of those coaches, and we appreciate everybody that gives us a hand on that. He's a realist. And I said, I like Shar Valley. Shar Valley was in a division with 3 teams that got home seeds, and they're the 4 seed. So it's going to be a tough division. This is going to be a great matchup. I can't go against it. But I can't see West A losing either because of the sheer fact that team, after losing to Indiana last year, he has that team under control. They had a big team, and you said it yourself, Josh Ferry this year has just been a powerhouse, a workhorse.
When he's good, he's great. So I'm not just on that. I'm like West A can stop the goals. They can score goals too. They get their goals in any which way, anywhere they come. They just know how to score.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see Char Valley stopping them as much as West A stopping Char Valley. So
And there are very few teams that I see out there that are having more fun than players from West A. You see, of course, Kellen Almeida and Shane Nolan, all those players. I mean, they only graduated 4 seniors this year. They returned 14 players, only 4 seniors. It's going to be an interesting year, an interesting game at Barrel. That is, of course, Monday, March 4th. I like West A. It's closer than it should be, but I have Char, I have close. So let's get into the final game, and then we're going to go up. We're going to back out, and we're going to get to D2 after we change the camera, I guess. So we'll finish this one up. Indiana Fox Chapel. Indiana, I can't go against them. Fox Chapel, they're just not able to match them. Madison Barker is terrific in goal. Fox Chapel hasn't been able to score many goals this season, and I just can't see Indiana doing anything other than winning that.
Yeah, I haven't seen Indiana at all this season, and I only saw.
Let's not bring that up, okay? I was supposed to see Indiana 3 times already this season, and unfortunately, by every reason imaginable, I have not been able to see Indiana. So I'll be there on Tuesday. I will be at S&T Bank Arena.
But
I guarantee you my car is going to break down. So at this point,
But another Indiana, I only saw Fox Chapel once this season out at Alpha, and Fox Chapel's not going to like me for that, but they did not impress me in that game. And actually, I think they played West A in that matchup, so which makes a little sense.
I saw them against Barrel against West A, and I saw a senior night, and I think it was like 13-0 at the end. Like I said, they'd have a hard time against high offenses and good defenses, and I can't put that other than West A.
And that's what Indiana brings to the tables.
I like Indiana there. Okay, so we're going to sign off real fast. We're going to start a new feed for the Division II postseason. I thank Ed for coming on for this one. We will be right back with the D2.
Thank you.
This is coming up now. To that.
All right, welcome back to the Island Sports Center. Brian Mitchell, Ed Major II. Ed, we're going to be talking the Division II postseason, the Open Conference, the teams that play with multiple schools. Basically, we were joking. We're like, this is going to be the conversation about who has the best opportunity to beat Burrell at this point. Connellsville did it once, which, is, as we say it as a joke, it is a possibility for a lot of teams to be able to beat Burrell because they played a lot of close games, but also played a lot of blowouts. So we're actually going to look right before that. We still have one contest left in the regular season. It's going to be Knock and Connellsville. Connellsville, of course, just beat Burrell, and Knock needs a win to get a play-in game with Trinity.
Not the best recipe.
The route is a lot rougher, but it's not impossible for Knock to do that. So we're going to play devil's advocate here and say Knock beats Connellsville. Knock gets a play-in game with Trinity. Who do you like in that game? At this point, I like Knock. It's going to be the a competition there. But I'm going to say that it's not going to go to that point. It's going to be Trinity versus Burrell in the first round.
Yeah, I would say it's going to be Trinity Burrell, but let's play it like you said. Let's play devil's advocate. Let's say Knock beats Connellsville. If Knock beats Connellsville, and really, it's not a stretch to say that Knock could fight Burrell. I mean, I would give the edge to Burrell, but it wouldn't be a stretch. It wouldn't be if Knock beats Connellsville and then plays a game against Trinity and gets in, and then has to play Burrell. I wouldn't make it a stretch to say Knock could give Burrell a run for their money, maybe through the first 2 periods.
Mm-hmm. I give them about 10 minutes into the first period. Tyler Stewart, Dylan Zwanka. There's not much that you can do. Andrew Burkett, there's not much that you can do with those Burrell Bucks right now that you didn't know. It's going to be interesting.
I saw them against Bishop Gatorman once in November. Kind of showed up for like the second half of that, and
the depth of the Burrell Bucks.
You think you saw the whole game just by seeing the second half.
The depth of the Burrell Bucks right now is is ridiculous. And
Yeah.
the only teams that gave them a hard time were the top 4 teams in the conference. And you're not going to see any of those until possibly the second round. So right now, we're just going to go. It's going to be Trinity Burrell. I'll call Trinity Burrell, and Burrell's going to move along. But Trinity's going to give them an effort. It's not deep enough to beat a team like Burrell, who just can beat you on 2 or 3 lines at that point. Their defense is pretty deep. It's going to be an interesting matchup there, but at the same time, it's not going to be one that's
It's probably going to be similar to what we saw in AAA to end the season between Peters and Bethel, where it was neck and neck kind of tied up through like the midway point, and then Peters just kind of like poured it on. And I think this is going to be very similar.
Now, the fun thing about Trinity that I learned is that they do get hyped for their own big games. When I was down there and they faced Morgantown, they knew what was on the line to beat Morgantown, and they can turn on the switch. But I don't think that knob has a high enough level.
Does that switch have enough power?
Yeah, there's enough power feeding that switch. So I'm going to have to give this one to Burrell. And like I said, it's not close.
But I mean, it's having
it's
fun
a great
with it.
run. It's a great run.
It's half the battle.
And it's going to be interesting to see. And you never know. Like I said with teams earlier, they may not. Some team might come out and have a bad game. You never know who's going to have a bad night that night. And they're coming off that loss to Connellsville in the closest season.
I've covered at least, I think, through like 2 or 3 of our goaltender of the months since the start of the season. And every time I've covered goaltender of the month, that goaltender has had what I would call a bad night that game. So actually, don't ever make me cover our goaltender of the month again.
All right. So we'll move on now. Connellsville, Carrick. This isn't going to change. Connellsville can't move from the 4 seed. Carrick can't move from the 5 seed. We've seen the Falcons a couple times this season. They have the depth thing against them, but they have Brown. Ryan Brown and Sebastian Skarzynski. They've been floating around. They had an opportunity to take the 2 seed. Unfortunately, with the way things rolled out, didn't happen for them. So they're going to be playing Carrick, who is also in their own a very good squad. I like Connellsville in this one, but I would be inclined to say that Carrick has a great shot of taking Connellsville down in this one. Although, like we just said, Connellsville just beat Burrell, so there is something to say for having a little bit of momentum going into this.
I mean, Connellsville, I don't know if they're last season, the one thing I remember about Connellsville in the playoffs was their student section here at the island out there in that far corner. And I think they kind of had like a little bit of a different maker to give Connellsville the momentum in that game.
Oh, you cannot deny.
I think ultimately
did
they lose that game ultimately, I think, in that playoffs. But if their student section has been the same during the regular season this year and will be the same in the playoffs this year, sometimes all it takes is that little bit of boost from the fans, that little bit of boost from the stands to give you the momentum to just get over that hump. And I think this is a close enough matchup between Connellsville and Carrick that it is going to have that little bit of hump that Connellsville just needs a little bit of boost to get over. Carrick will fight them all the way tooth and nail, but I'm going to give the edge to Connellsville.
Carrick's a tough team, and here's where I'm going to find the major differences. This is our United States size ice, the regular 85 by 200. Connellsville plays on Olympic size ice regularly, so they're used to wide open hockey, so they can get to the outside. They play a lot better on the outside. They're used to that.
They're used to more room.
Coming down to the small one, especially now that they know that they have one home game here against Carrick, that's where the edge I'm going to give to Connellsville, because Carrick's only been played on that once this season, so I'm going to give that to Connellsville based off of that alone. So I have to give that to Connellsville because it's on home ice. Because, frankly, they have a unique situation that no other team in the PIHL has in the Olympic size ice. So we'll go ahead and we'll move on to the next side of that bracket, Neshannock Morgantown. The battle of two, this is the story of 2 different teams. Neshannock on fire at the end of the season, controlled their own destiny, punched their own ticket in to go to the 2nd seed. Morgantown, I hate to use the term limped into the postseason, but they limped into the postseason. They spent the last 4 weeks with an ability to clinch and weren't able to do it. I said I was again that game against Trinity. They took a big lead. I thought they were going to do it. The Trinity just rose to their level, and it just never clinched. It just never connected with them. And Mechanic, a lot of things that go around this whole competition with Mechanic actually being in the postseason. All that aside, they're in the postseason now. So regardless of how it played out. They're here now.
Postseason is a brand new season
here.
from the very start.
And the Lancers, I like the Lancers here. I like the Lancers over in Morgantown. I like them hosting them at Hess, and I don't see Morgantown getting out of this one. And that's one of those ones just tough to say. Shannock's just too hot, and Morgantown's. It's basically what Matt and I discussed about the Mount Lebanon Erie Cathedral Prep matchup. Is one team's hot, one team's cold, and that's the end. That's the end of the conversation.
And I think even the travel from Morgantown to go all the way up to Hess, it's not going to do them any favors.
Well, that's the thing about D2 is they're all over the place anyway. So it doesn't matter.
So you're a little used to that.
AAA,
anyway.
you have the 79 corridor, by what I refer to it as. You got CC's off then a little bit, but for the most part, all the teams are on 79.
Yeah.
And you look at, that's that D2. It's kind of the same idea, except they're stretched from Erie to Morgantown. So you look at that, and that's just one of those things you have to worry about. It's the Shannock. I don't have any reason otherwise. I mean, I like Sid Smith as a goaltender. I've seen her play with the elite. And in her senior year, she could steal the game, but I don't know if she can steal it off of a team that's basically been running solid the whole season. Final matchup we're going to discuss here: Ringgold, Central Valley. I saw these two play earlier in the season. This game is going to be, and JR said it well, this is going to be a slobber knocker. These two teams don't like each other. These two teams are very physical, probably the most physical teams that I've seen in D2. And this is at Ross Draver on Monday, March 4th. And this is a toss-up. This is a real toss-up for me. I mean, Ringgold, it's not fair to say that about Ringgold, but Central Valley can put it on there. Frankovich is a heck of a player.
Yeah.
And Ringgold has their stars, but at the same time, both teams seem to play very physical, and they don't, there's a lot of opportunities going the opposite way. This is going to be an open game, but a physical game. You want to see a weird hockey game, watch these two teams play, because they both like to hit a lot. They both like to take odd man opportunities and cash in on them. This is going to be a fun one at Ringgold.
You want to know who has the edge in this? It's just who controls that physicality.
Yeah, whoever gets out to a 1-0 lead is probably going to win this game, because it's going to be these two teams going back and forth.
Yeah.
There was a scary, I don't know how it's going to build into it. I can't remember the player, but there was a scary situation a couple months ago whenever I covered the game, the player going out to the hospital, and it's just, it's going to be an interesting way of seeing how this one's going to play out. And this is the one, I'm going to call this one a toss-up. I have to call this one a toss-up, because as much as I like Ringgold and wanting to call them the favorite here, Central Valley has played tough and plays tough against Ringgold. And I don't care what happened in the regular season. This is going to be the matchup today. It's just going to be the closest one that I can't call.
Yeah, so I'm going to put – I just put Ringgold in and advancing through that. Just like you said, it's a toss-up, and I'll call it a toss-up. So in my mind, if I'm trying to kind of pick through a bracket, whenever something's a toss-up, I kind of always tend to take seeding in a toss-up in most scenarios. So that's not a knock to either of the teams. So it should be a good matchup.
All right. Well, I thank everybody for watching both of our coverage here today. Thank you for putting up with us throughout a nice Sunday, windy Sunday here. It looks like the river will finally calm down just a little bit. But we're going to make our trip out. Matt Gajtka just told me he doesn't know about all that. He's looking at it a little bit better of an angle than I am.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Playoff time.
You're going to join, once again, you can join me and myself and Matt at Printscape on Facebook Live next Tuesday. And, of course, I'll be at Indiana this Tuesday. You will be.
I'll be
you have two games this week. Two breaks this week.
I'll be at Ice Castle on Monday. And then, Ice Castle Monday, and then up at Barrel for those two Class AA play-in games. So, should be a really, really interesting opening round.
Yeah, the AA play-in games are at
Alpha. I should know that. I shoot out Alpha way more than anywhere else.
But anyway,
Arctic
as I was
Foxes
saying,
win. Arctic Foxes win behind.
Arctic Foxes have just won. That's I believe it's the girls' team. They beat Shaha.
Nice close 1-0.
You kind of got kind of a Facebook Live game of that, but congratulations to the Arctic Foxes on a 1-0 victory over Shaha. I think that's it for Ed Major, Matt Gajtka. I am Brian Mitchell. Thank you for joining us on Pittsburgh Hockey Digest. I hope you enjoy the remainder of your Sunday. We will see you in the rink this week. It's playoff time, baby. Take care.